Welcome to sixth edition of my Apocalypse podcast. Who would know that I would last for so long? Thank you everybody for joining me in my previous livecasts podcasts, and thank you for listening to my music. Thank you for interacting on chats with us. Please do share this video with any friends of yours. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special guest. I have a journalist and researcher in music, Yvonne, on your right, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Yvonne, good evening, and thank you so much for joining me tonight. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, and hey, everybody. Yeah, this is great. It's good to interact with another person.
Exactly, feels the same, and I hope for anybody who is locked in their house, don't feel alone. We're here with you. So very interactive chat. Feel free to ask us any questions you have. We're going to touch a couple of topics tonight. We're going to talk about music. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about anything you want us to talk about. So Yvonne, you are a journalist by vocation. Have you studied journalism?
I did, yeah. I did a master's in journalism about 3 years ago in Dublin in Griffith College, and that was really good because it pushes you to go out of your comfort zone. You know, we were told, go out into the city, find an event, report on it, come back by 1 o'clock and have your assignment in. You know, you had stuff like that happening, which was really cool. A lot of my lectures were like very kind of left-wing, some socialists in there and some kind of like different views, and it was good, you know, because you could have really frank conversations about, you know, how journalists are kind of, you know, being exploited as well for free labor, and kind of the lack of jobs that pay. And like, you know, when I was a student, I was writing for somewhere for free for only about 3 weeks, because I just gave up on it then, because I was like, fuck, I'm working for nothing. And they were harassing me for 5 articles a week while I was studying. And I was like, look, I can't do this. I can't work for nothing. But, you know, at the same time, you're kind of under pressure to do that, you know, because that's the kind of path that you're told. You have to make a name and then you can deserve to be paid. So there's this kind of conflict there. But yeah, I did study and I think it helped. I don't think anyone has to study journalism to do it, though. You know, you're interviewing me right now. You're doing the things that journalists do. You know, and lots of people I know have, you know, gone off and started writing for magazines, and they haven't studied it. You know, you don't have to go down that road at all.
Yeah, same applies to music as well. You don't have to study music in order to be a musician. I'm not even dare to call myself a journalist. I'm just ringing friends on Skype and broadcasting this. But yeah, I don't have any formal education in music, so I know where you're coming from, and I can totally relate with you on kind of play for free or write me articles for free. We have probably a full bucket of exposure tokens that we still haven't
I
used
got
up.
loads of it. It's, you know, in boxes in my room. It's under my bed. I bring it with me everywhere I go. I show it, you know, to my parents. I'm like, look, I've made it.
Yeah, I'm sometimes trying to exchange my tokens for tobacco and booze, but it rarely helps. Tell me, while you were in college, did you have any placements with any media, like
No.
as a part of study or?
No, some places do that. I know the journalism course in Galway gives you a placement with, I think it's the Connacht Tribune. You get a placement there. We didn't have one of those. It would have been nice, but we just didn't have that. You kind of just had to go off and, you know, start applying. And to be honest, like you just need to keep at it. You know, you need to keep emailing people, and maybe you'll get a few articles in somewhere. Or like I actually found, you know, that the music thing I've been doing for a few years, and I'm so happy that that's not commercial. You know, my website doesn't make money. I could be selling ads, but I really don't want to. The only money I've ever made from journalism is in tech. So for on and off for 2 years, I wrote about chatbots and artificial intelligence, and I got paid for all those articles. You know, every time I gave them an article, they gave me money, and it was great. But I wasn't actually hugely passionate about it. You know, it was good to have. So I think in tech and in stuff like that, yeah, that's a lucrative area. Get into it, you know, even if you're not hugely passionate, do it.
I would agree because I do make money from music. I set myself a rule: any musical equipment that I have, it must be bought from music. So it's not enough to survive, but I kind of figure out as well the tech industry is the most lucrative. So I jumped in on that train and I ended up in cybersecurity. I was working as a cybersecurity consultant up to recently, but then I quit and then I was kind of exploring my time and kind of dedicated.
Are you allowed to talk about that? Did you have to sign an NDA or anything?
Depends about what.
I don't know. I'm just curious.
I can talk about. Well, obviously, I cannot talk about the companies that I work on, but I can talk about lots of interesting things about it. Because I was actually reading on your researches, and I know that you did things about chatbots, artificial intelligence. So we'll come back on that after. I actually have a few good questions about that. But for anybody who just joined, feel free to drop us any comment on any social network that I'm streaming this on. We should be able to see a chat on the screen as well once you drop a message. And so Yvonne, I'm involved in music. Yvonne did lots of research in music industry related to gender research. So tell me more about the research you did on hot press and the Rolling Stone magazine covers. I kind of had a quick look over there, and I can see that you did a research of male-female ratio on the cover of both magazines, and it even went deeper, which I found really interesting thing to read about on parameters of how many of them had mouth open or closed, in motion or rest. So tell me a bit more about that research. It seems very, very exciting.
It's a lifelong project. It's never going to end. I'm tied to it now. So I started that as my dissertation in college back in 2017. And I spent a summer researching the magazine covers of Hot Press and Rolling Stone. And luckily, both magazines have archives of their covers online. So that cut down so much work for me. But I got really curious about it because I couldn't find any research about it anyway. There was no data about gender on there is one research paper about gender on the cover of Rolling Stone. There's nothing about hot press. And I thought, oh, fuck, we need to do something here. So what I did was I gathered about over 9,000 pieces of data from the covers of both magazines. So what I did was I got so let's say, here's a cover of Hot Press, right? So this is, Give Us the Night. Anyway, so what I did,
Sorry, so that's the male with the mouth open, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what I did was I took a cover, I divided it into 4, like this, a quadrant. So I looked at how much space each person occupies. I looked at if their eyes are open or closed, if their mouths are open or closed, if they're smiling, if they're holding an instrument, performing. I looked at if their arms were exposed, if their chest here, or their midriff down here, or if their legs. And I just did that for, I think, a few hundred for each magazine. I didn't do it for everything because you just couldn't do that. And just gathered that data and spent a whole summer doing that, and then kind of just kept going with it. And, the results basically were that women basically feature on 20% of hot press covers and 20% of Rolling Stone covers. And the way that men and women are represented on both magazines is almost exactly the same in every point in time, in every decade. So if you were to look at a graph of women's chest exposure, it would go like this for Rolling Stone, and it would go like this for Hot Press in exactly the same way across 40 years or 50 years. So all that stuff was really new, and I kind of someone else convinced me that, look, you need to publish this and share it. So that's what I've been doing the past while. I've just been kind of presenting it at conferences, sharing it on my website, and telling people about it, really. That's kind of the way it goes. So
yeah, it's very interesting because I came across this, and I've been featured in Horror Press in both kind of online and print edition, not on cover yet. But most of people who are actually the non-musicians, like people who enjoy music and are buying those magazines to get informed about music, they don't think about these things at all. So it's very interesting. So I hope somebody who's watching this will kind of have a new perspective on what's actually happening in the background of any magazine, not just music magazines, I suppose.
It's interesting because like the way that someone is presented on it, nothing is an accident. Everything is deliberate. So clothes that they're wearing, the way that they're standing, the position of all the other text and the words that are used as well, all of that is so deliberate. And hot press was anyway, I mean, if you look into like some of the quotes from people in hot press and Stuart Clark and Niall and all them, they were modeling that magazine on Rolling Stone. So there is, I suppose, a reason for similarity there. And it's interesting because that coordination, it's happening on either side of the Atlantic. And it just goes to show how much image matters and also how much gender matters and how much sexuality matters in like how a pop star is presented. You know, it's so crucial, it's so important. And it's obviously not spoken about by lots of magazines anyway. You know, why would they?
And since you mentioned that there was no change in 40 to 50 years, what can we make out of that? That there was no major change in how we like perceive like genders or like even what a pop star is through the decades, or
I think
what would be your conclusion in that?
So what happened was there was a really dramatic increase in the sexualization of women, but there was also a really dramatic and steady increase in the sort of, I suppose, desexualization of men. So men's bodies are always covered. Like U2 features like at least 80 times across hot press. And there were so many of their covers in my research, and they're always looking the same. And the way that masculinity is represented is also a serious problem. So like the way that men are represented with their arms covered, their chest covered, they're like kind of standing like this and they're looking down at the camera. Their mouths are always closed. They might be performing. Women are not photographed performing. So like the graphs for men's body coverage just keeps going up really steadily across time. You know, it's not an accident. The research shows that it's not getting any better. It's just getting worse.
Yeah, and I know this was definitely not a part of your research, maybe of some of future researches. What do you think about children pop stars turned into big pop stars like likes of Miley Cyrus or Ariana Grande, or probably there's even more that I'm not even familiar with. Like that's actually sexually making a sexual object out of child and really kind of grooming them into like being over 18 and then hitting them into pop industry. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I'd say I have a problem with it really, because when you expose somebody very young who's kind of in their formative years to the mechanics of this really commercial, image-hungry industry, where there's kind of rigid lines of how you can present yourself. And like when you're 12 and you're 13, like we all sort of experimented with our identity, and like I was an emo kid for a while, and then I was a mod, and then I was doing all this other stuff, and I was dyeing my hair and trying to figure out who I was. So if I was going through all that and then I was put into this system of you need to look like this, dress like this. Now, look, never spoken to a child pop star. You know, I'm just trying to perceive and base things on what I'm reading, you know. There's this really interesting thing by a woman called Kristen Lieb. So she wrote a book about how gender is branded in the music industry, and she created a life cycle of a female pop star. So if you apply this to like Christina Aguilera or Britney Spears, so they start off as the good girl, and there's this whole diagram in the book. So they start off as the good girl. You know, Christina Aguilera started off that way, very sweet with her first album. You know, you remember Genie in a Bottle?
Yeah.
And like all that stuff. You know, it was kind of nice. It was a little bit sexy, but it was still really sweet. And then they kind of transitioned to the bad girl. You know, if you look at the way Britney Spears went into her, like, you know, music later on. And they were all very young. They were still very young adults when they were doing those things. But there's this whole sort of progression laid out. Like there's a pathway, there's a system there, and I don't think you should be putting anyone really, but very young people into that. It's just going to fuck up, their perception of self, and you're exposed to all these things as well that maybe somebody who's trying to figure out who they are shouldn't be exposed to.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe they're all deprived from even normal childhood or normal kind of path of growth. So no wonder all of them had issues. Like even Britney Spears, or maybe later, who was it? Miley Cyrus, obviously, a few years ago, kind of completely going off the rails with drugs and everything. Justin Bieber as well, I think. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing how a modern pop industry works, because everything is about the money. But there was a kind of documentary that I ran across a few days ago on what was their name? A hip hop band, Black Eyed Peas. So their first singer, she's starring in this short documentary. So she's telling a story how they started as a band. In LA, like all kind of being together, and they were starting doing really well, up to the point where a big management kind of took them over, wanted to make international thing out of them, but then they started asking her to kind of grind off one of the other members of a band and kind of make her a sexual object, where before that they were all kind of mates creating music and kind of really being kind of a group of friends kind of creating music. They didn't see each other as like a boy or a girl or anything. They were just mates kind of making music. And she said no. She had like a big thing and she was like, no, I don't want to do this. So this was the point when she kind of left the band and Fergie joined. And then the rest is history. Kind of they really made it big, and we can see what happened after, like what type of music videos and what type of songs they kind of recorded, and she's now living in a small kind of apartment. She didn't make like huge amount of money like they did, but I would, if I were her, I would do the same. Like I don't think people should sell their soul to the devil, so to say, just for a little bit of fame. I don't know, what's your take on that, like in music?
I feel like it's not a secret, that you have to make compromises if you want to be, maybe signed to a big label, or you want to kind of, be a pop star, make millions. I think people maybe make compromises, and that's okay as long as they're okay with it. I'm not going to bash anyone for their decision that they make to do something really good for their career, or to go for it. And also I respect people who would decide, look, draw the line, not doing that. I think it's not a secret that, this is the kind of thing you might have to deal with. I think if you're going to go down that road, it's not a decision that I think anyone would take lightly. If I was offered a contract and I was offered a deal and there were kind of different things expected of me, I'd think about it, and maybe I'd go for it. I don't know. I've never been in that situation. So I definitely think, yeah, it's not something I would take. I don't think anyone would consider it lightly, and just kind of go into it and then be surprised and be like, whoa, fuck, this is happening. I had no idea that the music industry was like this. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to be presented with it,
Yeah, and tell me, in terms of your music research, I know you were a part of collaborative international music research. I'm talking about Facts. So Facts is a part of music pressure, and it's a Female Pressure. So tell me more about that collective. How did you get involved with them, and how did everything happen about the research you did?
Yeah, it's a really cool thing. So this was all around the time I was doing my master's again. I joined the network in 2017. So it's a database, first of all. So if you go on to Female Pressure on their website, you can search for people working in electronic music worldwide. Now it's like women and non-binary artists and people who don't identify as male, who are all kind of in this collective, who are on this database. So you can search for people by country, by profession. There's like visual artists, there's researchers, there's academics, there's producers, there's promoters, and all these different people. And I found it really fascinating because I was researching producers at the time. And then 2 years ago, the Research for Facts 2020 started. So this is like a music festival research that happens every 2 years since 2012. And I realized that Ireland hadn't been included in the research. There's loads of countries worldwide. There's over 90, there's a lot of countries who are included in this, lots of them in Europe and North America. And I just thought, we need to put Ireland on the map. And I volunteered. And that's kind of a great thing about it. There's no HQ in Female Pressure. There's no money in the network. Nobody's being paid to do the research. Nobody's being paid to run it. It's been going on for 22 years. And, there's no person who's in charge. There's a core volunteer team, but it rotates. If you want to take over the Instagram page, if you want to take over looking after the website, if you want to do the graphic design for something, just put your hand up, send an email, and then you're in. You're given a responsibility. I think that's something that is really important for feminist networks. There shouldn't be restricted access or barriers to access, like paying a membership fee to be in a feminist network. I mean, you're automatically excluding people. So this is it really appealed to me because there's no hierarchy. I'm fundamentally anti-capitalist and I hate hierarchy and I hate power, the way it plays out in some feminist networks and also other kind of life in general, basically. So I got involved and then we started counting 2 years ago, the gender on electronic music festival lineups and then published it. And we had an event in Dublin. It was really good. It went really well. I was really happy with it.
Yeah, just before I'll ask you a bit more about that event, tell me, you obviously did the research on, you collected data of a few festivals in Ireland. What was your criteria of selecting the festivals? Did you take statistics of their lineup?
Yeah, so I mean, they had to be purely electronic music festivals. So things like, if it was a mixed genre festival, no, it couldn't go in. It had to be purely
just electronic music. That was the main
just
criteria.
Electronic music. So we put in Life, we put in Boxed Off, Hotbox, and Audio Garden. So they were the four. Maybe we could have done more, but I was the only person counting Ireland's data, and
can you describe me the process of kind of collecting data? Did you just go on a website and just kind of random collect data of the lineup, put it into Excel sheet, or what was the kind of mechanical background of it?
Yeah, so there was a methodology that was designed by the core volunteer team. So we were trained in terms of this is how you select, this is how you research, this is how you submit, and then a lot of the research was verified by the group again, so it was recounted just to make sure that things were accurate. So we didn't just go around looking at people's profile pictures and deciding man, woman, you can't do that. So what we did was we looked for bio descriptions that were written by that person and looked for the pronouns that they used. So going on to like resident advisor, looking at the agency website for the producer, seeing what description was there, going on to Facebook, how do they present themselves? So what pronouns did they use? And sometimes you couldn't identify it. And that's fine. Just don't identify, don't assume anything. So that was the methodology. And then again, it was rechecked, verified. That's why it took so long. It took 2 years to do it. So it was about 40 of us doing it together. And it worked that way. So.
And did you get the support from EMRA and First Music Contact over here in organizing the event, or?
So, well, the event was just organized by me, but it was a really simple event. Like, it wasn't very complicated. So I presented the results at the Soundhouse, and then we had a panel, which was Angela, and it was Matt, who's involved in booking for Life, Matt Dundon, and we had Elaine May, a producer in Ireland, and the four of us just had a chat. And it was really good. There was a lot of interaction from the audience, people asking about safe spaces in electronic music. That came up. So what are the ways that people can work on making sure that people at these gigs can feel safe? Because, you go out clubbing and sometimes you don't feel safe. So you get groped on the dance floor. It's happened to me so many times. Someone grabs me, I look around and there's 20 people. I'm like, who the fuck was that? And it kind of ruins your night as well. So we were talking about that. and how people can get involved and things like that. So it was really good. But hopefully we'll have more of those. You know, that was the first female pressure event in Ireland in 22 years. So maybe we'll have another one after all this stuff kind of blows over and we can actually start meeting up again and doing things. So
yeah, it's great.
I'd like to do another one.
Fair play to you for taking an initiative and just changing something on a kind of national scale over here. That's it is very impressive. And tell me, in terms of Irish kind of politics, in a way, I know that traditionally this is a Catholic country. I don't know, like our generation or maybe our parents. Most of actually, the schools are owned by Catholic Church. So there's a certain way of education of the children, including like sexual education, whether it's existent or non-existent, or whether it's good or bad. So I know that people my generation, they went to those kind of schools, so they are now bit older, but somewhere it's kind of imprinted in your head like a model of behavior. And for me, I kind of see there's a bit of kind of paradox, a bit of clash, that Ireland is so kind of conservative in terms of education, but so liberal in terms of human rights. Like we have like same-sex marriages are being voted like on referendums, so that's a thing.
We have the freedom to protest as well. I mean, some places don't really get that either. So.
Divorce is like legal, although a little bit kind of under restrictions. And I think it was only legal from 1995 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was.
So
around the time.
In general, I can see like it's very kind of progressive in some way, but then on the education system is very kind of conservative. So what's your take on that kind of paradoxical situation in the country?
Having gone through a really, really heavily Catholic education in a girls' school growing up, I feel I have a lot of problems with it. I don't know how much it has changed. You know, I went to my primary school was all girls. It was run by an order of nuns. And then so was my secondary school, that was run by an order of nuns as well. And the secondary school was a little bit more free than the other ones, although they didn't provide us with any sex education in secondary school. An outside group had to come in when we were 16 and tell us what condoms were, even though we already knew what condoms were. You know, we had the internet, we had all this stuff, you know, porn, whatever, like we were all watching that, and, you know, people were having sex at that stage. So like it was a bit late, but they came in and they taught us how to put on condoms on bananas. And then they tried to give us them. You know, they're like, here, take some. And then the nuns just kind of grabbed them and threw them in the bin and said they can't have those. You know, we don't allow them to have those things in this school. So there was a bit of that. In primary school, we watched, oh my God, I can't believe it. I think this is still a thing. So there was this video that was made in the 80s by nuns in order to teach children about puberty and sex. So we were shown this video in like 2004. So it was like 20 years old at that stage, and it showed it. It was so dated. I remember sitting there with our teacher, and the nun in the video was talking to us about what happens if your uncle touches you and who you should talk to. And there's this very delicate stage of a woman's life where she might start bleeding. And, you know, if this terrible thing happens to you, this is what you need to do and who to talk about it to. And there's nothing about sex. There was nothing about sexuality, nothing about consent, nothing about contraception, like nothing at all. It was all about just periods and what happens if your uncle touches you. And like that was our sex education at the age of 10. And then it was 6 years, and then we had another one, which was how to put a condom on a banana. And then that was it. We were sent off into the world. There was no talk about sexuality, you know. So it was a bit of a shock, I think, when we were in school. We were like, what the hell is going on? Why can't we actually have decent education? I mean, what was it like for you in Serbia?
For me, for a start, like we didn't have segregated schools or classrooms, you know. Like I was in a classroom like boys and girls mixed. My classroom was around 35 to 40 pupils. and there are like 4 of those per generation in a school. And I actually think that because I see over here kids are like going to either like a boy or a girl school, I don't know how would I kind of fit in there, you know, especially going to puberty and stuff. So this is actually a question I want to ask you. Like, I actually like, okay, we didn't have sexual education at all, so we kind of need to figure that on our own. But you know, luckily parents are there to kind of educate you at home, like normally. But I don't know if I can kind of agree with the segregation by gender in school. Like, how do you find when you finish the school or during the school? Like, do you feel that it would be better or more beneficial for your kind of not education but kind of growth as a human being if the school was mixed?
I think there were a lot of positives. I think because. Okay, so first of all, the first 2 years of secondary school, I had no friends. Just putting it out there, like, you know, I had been bullied in second year while I was away at like the Gaeltacht and stuff, and I was so traumatized, like I couldn't make friends. And then in third year, I actually made a really solid, amazing group of friends. So it was just all girls, all of us together. And I think there was something of a comfort in the fact that it was just all girls. You know, because at the time we had started trying to, you know, having boyfriends and stuff. And I think if we had been in kind of a mixed classroom, there would have been other kind of pressures or other kind of things going on. Like, I don't know, there was a bit of a comfort. Like, you could go in with no makeup on, your hair a mess, and you're like, don't care. You know, it's just me and my friends. You know, I'm not trying to, you know, going through puberty, I'm not trying to impress anybody here. I can just go in and kind of, you know, there was less, I think there's a lot of pressure on girls and guys as well, but certainly when I was growing up, there was a way to be a teenage girl. And I remember consciously thinking, I need to wear makeup now because that's what all the girls do. That's what women do. You know, I need to wear mascara. I need to have a short skirt. I need to look a certain way. And I remember not questioning this, you know, I was very young. Because that was just the way it was. That was how all the other girls were doing it. And, you know, you got picked on if you weren't doing that. You know, so it's kind of like trying to fit in. And I think trying to fit in was made easier by the fact that it was just all girls, even though there was still bullying there. But I think we turned out okay. Like, we turned out okay. It wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah, eventually we all turned out okay because I turned out kind of okay. No, I didn't have our problems that I kind of had while going to school and growing up was more on a kind of class kind of level in terms of kind of social classes, like because I grew up during the war and kind of country was under international sanctions, so there was no money. My dad's salary was 2 Deutschmarks, and to buy a pair of Nike Air Max, you would have to fork out 200. So it was very common. You walk down the street and somebody just takes off your runners, basically tell you to take the runners off and walks. Yeah, so I was kind of going through that sort of bullying, but I just made peace that I don't have money for that. So, you know, like I never bought that kind of like runners or jerseys or whatever. So it was, for me, it was more on that side. But yeah, I used to go into school in a mixed class, and I think it was more beneficial to kind of, you know, just learn about each other a bit more while we were growing up. There was a question that came in over there. It just disappeared from the screen. I still have it on the chat from Katrina. She asks, do you think that Ireland has a good sexual education today? Only if you're informed, because you maybe are not going to school anymore.
Yeah, from what I had, mine was terrible, inadequate, really bad. And I hope it has changed. I know that there was a lot of talk about it a couple of years ago, about changing that and maybe having more conversations about consent and sexuality. I don't know how that has panned out, to be honest. I don't know if that's been brought in. There was a lot of porn bashing. People were giving out about porn. I actually think that there's some pornography websites that would actually be pretty good for teenagers to have in an educational setting, you know, to actually talk about those things and to not think that this is something you need to watch in secret, or, you know, I think that should be part of the curriculum. I don't think Ireland is at that stage. I don't think we're at the level of like bringing porn into classrooms. Yeah, I don't think it's good. I think it's pretty kind of harmful, to be honest. I think I was a bit traumatized a bit from it, thinking my body is shameful, I can't talk to anyone about it. That was how I felt after my sex education in school.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question, Katrina. And let me see now. Tell me a bit more about your Spread zine project. So I know that you're making a zine which kind of deals with music, with sex, and do-it-yourself culture in Ireland. So I know that you're publishing this quarterly each year. You had 2 issues so far, right?
We're still on issue 2. So issue 2 was meant to be this month. Hasn't really panned out. I think we were kind of still working on things, and then this happened. The COVID-19 thing happened, so now it has totally stalled. We're still working on it, as in, design, content, and all that. But in terms of like selling ad space to shops and getting it on bookshelves and launching it and having people attend an event to buy it, that's not happening right now.
Yeah, that's probably obviously postponed like everything else.
I'll show you issue 1. So that was issue 1. It came in 4 different colors, so it was pink, yellow, blue, and another blue. So like, it was really informal, kind of casual. I printed it in my bedroom. 36 pages. There was an interview with a music publishing expert. There was a sex diary of online sex work, some ads as well, which was good. We got some advocacy groups in there. It's me and my friend Mairead. So she's a visual artist, Mairead Mullen, and we work on this together as co-editors. And so she's really good with the whole visual design side of things. I work a lot on the writing. And, issue 2 is coming out. I just finished something. So this is for issue 2. I don't know if you can read that. So there's a piece I'm working on about online feminism during the crisis and what people are doing online in a kind of feminist capacity. So I'm starting off looking at music and the kind of things that people in the music industry are doing. And I'm going to look at, the sex industry. I'm going to look at other places to see how are people supporting each other. But Spread came about really out of frustration about capitalism and my job. I hated my job.
I hate capitalism too. You're on the same boat there.
Fuck capitalism. So I was going through a bit of a hard time with my previous job. Some stuff had happened and I wasn't happy with what had happened, basically. So I left that job. But towards the end of it, I came home one day and I was really frustrated. I was like, look, writing an article isn't good enough. We all need outlets to get our frustration out. But I was like, look, writing isn't going to cut it right now. So I sat down. Unfortunately, I'm a magazine hoarder, so I have like 100, 200 magazines and newspapers in my bedroom. And I started cutting them up, and then I made a front cover of Spread. So that was how that started. And then I was working on that for a while. I really wanted to make something that would kind of shock people, something you wouldn't find in a glossy magazine on a newsstand. So the kind of more shocking stuff, or like gross, disgusting stuff, which, I love. Like, I want that stuff out there on the newsstands. I want people to be a bit disturbed or to see something that they weren't expecting and maybe didn't want to see. So the stuff about online sex work, I put that in there, and I think I'd like to continue with that as well. And stuff about music, there's quotes from interviews I conducted with women working in music in Ireland. Most of them are anonymous because they just don't want to be identified, and that's totally fine. So there's lots of stuff happening, and it's open to submissions. We had a few people send stuff in, which was nice. And yeah, hopefully that comes out soon.
So if anybody wants to contribute, kind of to get involved and send you a submission, what is the best way to do that?
So we're on Facebook and Instagram. So Spread Ireland on Facebook, and then Spread Zine on Instagram. So they're the only 2 platforms, Facebook and Instagram. On my website, lazerguidedreporter.com, you can find like clippings of the first issue. You can see what our vibe is, and we're open to, a lot. you know, the theme of issue 2 is data. So if you have something to say about data in terms of music, in terms of sex or DIY culture, you know, you can send it in and, you know, get it featured.
Speaking of data,
Yeah.
so what do you think about sex tapes and people taking selfies of themselves and sending to their kind of partners or casual encounters or stuff? So there's a little bit of freedom that people should be able to do that. But in terms of data, like should people be a bit more educated about data and how to kind of keep that safer while they're enjoying themselves and being free to do what they want?
Yeah, I think there's no safe space on the internet at all. So if you put something up, you know, people obviously shouldn't steal it or copy it and send it on. But, you know, it could very well happen, even if it is behind a paywall on a website and you're putting up photos and videos. The people who subscribe can very easily save those images, download them, send them on. You know, there's a website called OnlyFans, so you can make some money, you know, being in control of what you put out there and capitalizing on it, which, you know, fair play. You know, everyone has the right to do that. But there has been a lot of controversy because some subscribers, what they do is they take screenshots of all the photographs and they make a new profile and they make money from the photographs of other people. So there's a lot of that going on, but fortunately websites like OnlyFans, they actually take action against people who do that themselves. They don't just sit back and think, oh, well, you put it up there, you suffer the consequences. They actually take action and support the creators. Like they follow up, they chase these people down and they enforce legal action against them. So I think platforms like that are actually doing a really good job in terms of protecting people who put up nudes, people who put up videos. Like, come on, I've done it. We've all done it. You know,
yeah,
maybe we haven't all done it. But
we should probably do a joint project. So cybersecurity, I can offer that piece of expertise, and then we can just do something jointly, maybe for your zine. But like because I'm super paranoid, like in terms of data and everything. Speaking of data. So here's an interesting fact, but this is like a little bit of a kind of tinfoil kind of situation. Tinfoil hat. Like anytime you obviously have a smartphone, you take photos with your smartphone. So you actually allow lots of apps access to your photos. So do you know that anytime you open your Facebook actually already has data to all of your photos? Now, what they do with those photos, that's again a black box. Probably nothing, but they're actually doing lots of stuff, lots of kind of facial and body recognition and everything. So anytime you take a photo, you actually upload a copy to Facebook, to Twitter, to any single application that has access to your photos. So my piece of advice would be just be careful what kind of apps you're installing, because nobody reads the small print. And if you install some third-party app that is going to help you kind of write a Instagram post or something, they might get a copy of your like private photos that you don't want to share. So that's kind of from my point of view, like we should be kind of a bit more careful how and where do we store those very cool photos of ourselves.
Are there any kind of networks for people like yourself who are working in, you have experience in cybersecurity, like kind of advocacy networks, people who want changes to laws, changes to practice?
There probably are. Unfortunately, I can't tell you like off top of my kind of head.
I don't know. Like
yeah, I can look into it, because you know I'm like self-taught in this, and I did work with big companies, but it's not that I am kind of involved in that. Like I took a break from that and I mostly do music, but I can look into that for you and like. There definitely are, because there's lots of people kind of running podcasts, like super professionals who are 100% in the industry. Like I'm kind of half musician, half kind of IT professional. But let me see, what else did I wanna ask you? Speaking of like music, like live music reviews. Have you ever done kind of just going around the gigs? And if yes, are you still doing that? Or
I have in the past. I haven't done it in a while. The very first thing I did in journalism 5 years ago was a live music review in Galway, and there was a series of 10 interviews that accompanied that piece. So there was a gig on in 2015, Panda Dub from France. So he's a dub producer. He came over to Galway, and it was a really big thing, like really big gig. DJs from around the country came in to Galway and played. So there was 9 artists performing on that night. So I interviewed all of them, and then I wrote a review of the gig. And like that was my very first action in journalism. It was only afterwards when I did the review, I was like, whoa, that was journalism, wasn't it? Okay, maybe I should do more of that. But I started off with a dictaphone that I got in a secondhand pawn shop for €10. So it was this. It's like a Sony dictaphone.
yeah, it does the job.
ICD or 100. So there's no USB port. You can't upload any audio to your computer. So it only does record and playback. So there's about 10 interviews on here, which have never been uploaded. And, you know, it still works or whatever. But that was what I started on. And I've since upgraded to something much more savvy. So I went around, and actually at that gig, what I did was I went around with a dictaphone in the smoking area, and I went up to people and I started asking them questions. You know, I obviously did it early on because I knew people were drinking. You don't want to interview people who are like really drunk, and there's an ethics issue, I think, there. So I went around and just kind of got people's thoughts about like, why do you go to drum and bass gigs? What's your passion? Why do you do this? And that was the very first thing I did. I had a rule about it. So if I was at a gig reviewing, no drinking until midnight. So I never got messed up at a gig that I wanted to review, but I did have a drink, but only after 12 o'clock. So nothing at all before then.
Yeah,
just so
fair play for self-discipline. I'm still, after 20 plus years, trying to enforce the rule, do not drink before the gig. But and tell me, what kind of music do you listen to?
I listen to, it depends where I am. Like I like going to drum and bass gigs because the energy is so powerful. I quite like that. I like going to rock gigs. I listen to a lot of funk and prog rock. So prog rock is like something I'm really passionate about. So current stuff and also kind of older stuff from the 70s and the 60s. And, you know, I've been listening to a lot more Irish artists the past few years, getting more involved in like who's out there doing things. And, you know, so I was listening to Maya Sophia, her album Bath Time. So good. Like, I think she, you know, hands down should have won the Choice Music Prize, but she didn't anyway. But she's amazing as well. And, you know, I think tuning in to what's happening in Ireland a lot more has been very beneficial to you know, my own library of music and what I like. You know, I think often we look to like the US and we listen to what Spotify suggests to us, which, you know, I don't think there's much magic in that. You know, I like listening to a radio presenter, and I like listening to a human select something spontaneous, not based on an algorithm of what I already like. You know, there's something really nice about that. So radio is a really big, important thing to me. Maybe more so the last few years.
You listen to radio,
yeah? Yeah.
That's great. I'm not a big fan of kind of Spotify playlisting as well. Not Spotify as such, but in that term, kind of machine, kind of telling you what's the next big. I, as a musician, I really need to kind of discover new and fresh music just to kind of be in touch with what's happening outside of my studio, because as a producer I mostly listen to my own music, just going over and over the same song, trying to make it perfect. But then I need a fresh music. A few years ago I would use YouTube just because their suggestions were amazing. You get a song that, I mean, you play a song, but they kind of throw you good suggestions. But now you like this and they just give you more of that, like so this is again like weird algorithms, and especially kind of in a capitalist terms, they don't want you to kind of explore too much. You're kind of more better if you're kind of obedient and you like this. And this is how ads work as well. Like, you like this, okay, just they feed you more of that, and you kind of stop asking questions.
I get really paranoid about that, the ad thing, because like, Wish, like all the weird shit that they suggest to you.
Yeah, I'm getting crazy weird shit too. Like sometimes they're spot on. Like that's scary thing.
Scarily so. I'm like, wow, I really want that thing. I had no idea that existed. But sometimes, I haven't even looked through that website before, whatever website it is, and they've suddenly suggested something which is exactly what I was looking at somewhere else. I'm like, oh, they're watching me.
Have you ever got the situation when you're talking about something and you just see an ad about that?
Yeah, that has happened before.
Yeah. For me, it has happened where I'm talking about something in Serbian, and I never Googled anything because I just came with the idea, okay, I'm gonna think about thing X, and then 5 minutes later I see an ad in English for that, and I was like, whoa. It's really scary. And tell me, I was reading your article about music reviews. You did a review of French electronic Air and Air's Moon Safari and Premier's Symptoms after kind of 20 odd years. Do you like French electronica?
I do, yeah, I love it. There's something really sexy about it. I like the kind of history to it as well, like, Daft Punk and Etienne de Crécy and all these people. I think there's something really sexy about the sound, and I love Air as well. I just wanted to review those albums. I was looking for any reason to review them. I was like, oh, they're 21 years old this year. Good reason to review them. So yeah.
I love Air as well, and I kind of like the part you wrote over there about the sex aspect of that album, comparing it to Massive Attack. Like that's amazing. And
it's not really reported on. Like, I found one article that spoke about the kind of sexual status of Moon Safari. And then because in an interview, he's talking about, I think it was with Pitchfork as well, he's talking about how someone came up to him and, was saying, oh, we have sex listening to your album. I was like, wow, that's such a compliment. Like, that's such a really nice thing for a fan to say. But they meant for it to be that way. They meant for it to be this kind of sexy album. It's like, imagine you've gone out, out to a gig and you've gotten really messed up and maybe you've taken some chemicals, and then the next day you're in this floaty world of like, oh, I really want to have loads of bodies around me. That's such a good album to have for that. And I think they designed it in a way that it really supported that kind of feeling.
Yeah, man. Have you? Here's an idea or a question. Maybe you've been there. Have you ever had have you had sex with a partner, but both of you wearing headphones and listening to the same music or same playlist on kind of really loud volume?
No, I've never done that.
Try that.
That's an idea. That's such a good idea.
I highly recommend it.
So would you select the music that they listen to, and they select the music
the way I did it, you get a phone, so you have like a splitter jack, so you can put like two sets of headphones in one, so basically both of you are listening to the same thing, so it's kind of silent disco, but silent disco gymnastics. And crank on.
That's such a good idea. But would the headphones not fall off?
If you have headphones like this, they will definitely not fall off.
Okay.
And or even earphones, like, just kind of stick them in. Very good, because when you turn the music so loud, you don't hear anything that's actually happening in the room. You just see the other person, and you have music loud, and you're kind of on the same playlist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Massive Attack should be on there, and like Portishead as well would be really good.
Try that. It's really cool. Put like a 3-hour playlist and have fun. That's like WOB recommends.
Well, I can't do it now. I'm supposed to be self-isolating and not touching people.
Not right now, but once we are out of this isolation and everybody go wild. This is actually a suggestion to all of you over there who never tried this. WOB recommends try this. It's fucking awesome. And just for a wrap up, we're nearing to 1 hour. Thank you so much for joining me. I had a really good time talking to you. Can you give me advice I asked this Remy yesterday, who's my guest, but I want to ask you as well. Can you give single people advice how to deal with this lockdown situation?
Yeah, I think it's good to remember that you can still have a really good sex life on your own, and certainly with the internet. So this should be a really good opportunity for people. So there's maybe 3 or 4 things you can do. Number 1, engage with something online. Go on to, OnlyFans or somewhere where people are, selling things online. Remember to pay people for those things. If you're going to watch like a live stream of somebody stripping or something, tip them. Don't just sit there and watch it for free. People are working really hard. So find things online, good things, things that you like. Support your local sex shops by ordering toys online. Now would be a really good time to like find something you've never tried before online, get it delivered, try it out. You have a lot of time on your hands. What you can also do, number 3, use this time as a time to meditate and figure out who you actually are as a sexual person. So, it's all very quick sometimes, and people don't really talk sometimes as well, which is a bit strange. So what you can do is get a meditation app. There's lots of them out there. They play like bird sounds and wind and all this stuff. So meditate as you would normally do. And then what you need to do is bring in some erotica and like different things. And what that does, you loosen up your mind, but then you allow this erotic stuff in. So read some fiction, read something, watch something while you're meditating. And then write down everything that you like. And then verbalize that next time you see someone. And it actually becomes really easy. Because sometimes, if you want to do like, dirty talk with someone and then it gets kind of awkward sometimes. I think sometimes that happens. So meditation is good. So yeah, this is a really good opportunity for people. Make use of it. Definitely. Yeah. That's my advice.
Great advice. And Yvonne, thank you so much. It was my pleasure and honor to talk to you. Thank you for running us through all your researches. Anyone who wants to get involved with Yvonne's project, especially the zine, spread zine, visit her website, lazerguidedreporter.com. Find them on Instagram and Facebook, and get in touch, get involved. Let's support the do-it-yourself scene in Ireland. And I'm going to sign off with my song called My Calm Down, which is going to drop in April or maybe even May if you're alive until then. Join me again tomorrow. I have another special guest, and build the sexual tension until this virus is over, and we're gonna have a massive party after. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow.